Actually, welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official audio show of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, and of course the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Oh my god, Season 1, Episode 48. Look at this, 48 episodes. We haven't been canceled. Well, I guess when you sort of produce your own content, it's hard to get canceled. Or is it? I don't know. Evan Nolan and I, we've got quite a bit to look at. We looked at the College Basketball Hall of Fame. They announced their latest class, and oh my god, the list of talent there is just incredible. We also looked at Andrew Bogut, the Australian center who just retired. Is he a Hall of Famer? Well, your first thought is, no, he's not. But maybe he is. There's certainly a way for international competitors like Mr. Bogut to get in, and we look at that possibility. There was a couple of tragic passings in the world of sports and entertainment as we looked at the passing of former decathlete gold medalist Rafer Johnson and his very interesting life, and that of Pat Patterson in the world wrestling entertainment world. Another very, very interesting man with a colorful history. And then I got into a tangent about Sarah Fuller and Vanderbilt football. Got a little bit heated. Evan and I didn't agree on everything. Actually, I kind of like that. It made it a far more interesting show. And you'll also know where to send your hate mail. I provide exactly how you can do that. So without further ado, let's bring in the star of the show, Evan. Evan, how are things?
They're not going too badly, sir. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Another interesting day in a little Caribbean paradise. And when I say interesting day, really nothing happened. Which is kind of nice. I got no problem with that.
That's good.
So
yeah, I actually this week, just as an update for anyone who wonders after my little soapbox rant last week, my uncle actually did pass away on Tuesday from COVID.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and my aunt is still in the hospital. So he lived a good life at the age of 90, but and they wanted to intubate him and he refused at the end. So he went out on his own terms, but. Yeah, he did end up passing away, and COVID has been circling around. One of my best friends lost his father-in-law the next day, and his mother-in-law is in the hospital. My wife's cousin's wife, mom, and dad are both in the hospital with COVID. One of them has COVID and pneumonia at the same time, which seems like to be very, very bad. And it's all over the place. So everybody wear a mask and be safe. That's all I'm going to say. I already had my big rant last week.
So let's dedicate the show to your uncle.
Oh, well, thank you. Uncle Bob's Robert Nolan out of Shelton, Connecticut. So here's your Uncle Bob.
And Bob's your uncle, literally.
Yeah, he was. Yep. That's the running joke, and I was always like, it's like, why did I say that? And to a friend of mine who's British, he says, because everyone has named Uncle Bob. I was like, what? Oh, wait, no, I do too.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
So one thing that I guess sort of like came out this week, because it's sort of a light week, although even when we say it's a light week, we wind up talking for 2 hours. The College Basketball Hall of Fame put out their class. And I know it's a relatively new hall, but holy crap, when you put out a list like this and then you look at their credentials, and the biggest name is actually your worst candidate in Paul Pierce, how loaded is this group of talent?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Pierce is, as I've said many times, probably one of my 5 favorite athletes of my lifetime in Boston. Just the whole ride with him being young and then almost getting stabbed to death in a bar and then having to go through those terrible teams with Antoine Walker and then ending up with Allen and Garnett and winning the championship and should have won the one in 2010 as well. He's just one of my favorite athletes. And I don't think he didn't spend a lot of time looking at their actual college credentials. But he's probably the headliner in terms of everyone here, except for the other guy who should have been one of the greatest Celtics of all time,
right?
Len Bias, who I know is a 2-time ACC Player of the Year, was taken number 2 pick in the 96 draft, and then unfortunately that evening,
2 days later, he passed away.
Yeah, passed away of cocaine usage.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, from all indications, was not much of a cocaine user, and overdid it on the partying, and did not go well. So, unfortunately, Len Bias's death ultimately led for the Lakers to be able to catch up in championships. I hate to say it, like that, but he was one of the greatest basketball players, largely forgotten these days at how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised to see him here.
Just a supreme athlete from everything I've been reading. Just one of those raw players that a coach would just love to just sort of shape and mold. And what he could have done at the pro level, we'll never know, especially for a team that loaded that got that lucky to have a number 2 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But so we have Len Bias. Pierce,
he's the first team All-American in '98.
Right, he was. But with a lot of these other players, they were like consensus players of the year. It's just crazy the amount of talent that exists in the college ranks. When I'm looking at the rest of these guys, David Greenwood, UCLA, 2-time first team All-American, 2-time Pac-10 Player of the Year.
Remember the championship 1990 Detroit Pistons?
Mm-hmm. Another relatively big name, I think, Hersey Hawkins, Bradley. I'm not positive, but I think he's got to be the only player from Bradley that ever won a version of the Player of the Year. I should have checked this out before, but just
he won the Sporting News and the UPI Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm. 2-time Missouri Valley
NAP.
Conference. And an NBA All-Star.
Mm-hmm. And, a national scoring leader. He led the NCAA in scoring in 1988.
And I just love his name, Hersey Hawkins. So alliterative. It sounds like it should have been like something that Stan Lee would have wrote.
Great, yeah. Pretty good. Then we have Jim Jackson.
Mm-hmm. With the Ohio State.
The Ohio State, the College Player of the Year for the UPI in 1992, 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year, 2-time consensus first team All-American, 2-time Ohio Mr. Basketball.
Right.
Which is pretty impressive.
No, absolutely. So, especially Ohio. Certainly winning that in some states is a bigger deal than others, but I think anytime you accomplish that, it's something special and no one can take that away from you.
And, of course, most importantly, involved in love triangle with Jason Kidd and Tony Braxton.
That's so true.
I waited until we got all the other stuff out of the way, but I can't let Jim Jackson go without bringing up that story from the 94-95 season, I think, where they settled it by trading Jackson to New Jersey. And that trade, by the way, was Jackson, Sam Cassell, Eric Montross, George McLeod, and Chris Gatling to the New Jersey Nets for Sean Bradley, Ed O'Bannon, Robert Pack, and Khalid Reeves.
Wow. Pound for pound, isn't that the worst quartet?
Bradley, O'Bannon, Pack, and Reeves?
Yeah.
I mean, O'Bannon was pretty good. Well, he was a much better college basketball player, and much more important because he's going to basically force the NCAA to, or he has his lawsuit basically forced the NCAA to give likenesses to the players. We may actually end up getting NCAA basketball games again shortly. I still play, I think, the last one, which was NCAA 2K5. I still have on PlayStation 2 I'm like 37 seasons in. One of them, I started at Campbell, the Campbell Camels. And I'm been through a whole bunch of places. I won championships at Washington State and Arkansas and somewhere else. So at this point, but yeah, that's how long it's been. The guy on the cover of that is Oh, what's his name? From Stanford with the big poofy hair. Can't think of his name right now.
I can see him, but yeah, it's the name.
Yeah, never good in the NBA. But anyway, shadow ban's important for that.
Very important. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Shawn Bradley is tall.
Oh, Jesus. All I know is this. When I watched Space Jam the first time with a couple of my friends, we all had the same reaction. Like, okay, what? So, like, the cartoon Monstar sucked the talent of Shawn Bradley. What talent?
Shawn Bradley was tall.
And it seems like just a great guy. But just like, we're one of those guys, like, all his life, well, you should be playing basketball. Like, okay.
Yeah, he averaged, Shawn Bradley, how many points a game do you think he averaged in his career?
I'm going to guess 5.
8.1.
All right, it's more. So he's better than I thought.
8.1 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. Impressive number of blocks.
That's a good number, but he could just stand there in front and just it'll bounce off his potato head.
Yeah. And then Anton Jamison.
Yes. I'll always remember Anton Jamison, not for necessarily what he did from college, but because he was a draft day trade where they swapped picks and we got Vince Carter. I'm a Raptors fan, just for those wondering there. So, yeah, ACC Player of the Year, Consensus National Player of the Year, twice an All-Star, and a Sixth Man of the Year. That to me is one of the more interesting awards. Is the Sixth Man of the Year, but that's another show.
And scored 20,000 points in the NBA. So,
very good player. Career. And a couple of coaches.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just to say also three-time first team all ACC, which is probably not something very many people are ever going to say again.
No,
stick around. You make it all ACC team twice, you're already to the NBA. So,
20 years from now, this the classes that it just won't be the same. It can't be.
Yeah.
It's just nobody's going to stick around, and well, A, they don't have to. B, they may not even elect to go to college. There's different avenues. And if I was an elite player at the high school level, I wouldn't go to college for that.
No, not when there are other avenues available to you. The NBA is really gonna have to develop the G League or into something, so that there's a legitimate development system where they can keep people here. Otherwise, people making trips overseas, getting paid for a year and coming back, or then you just have to change the rules again.
Mm-hmm. So, and I guess a pair of coaches, Rick Byrd was at Lincoln Memorial and Belmont, mostly at Belmont, where he was the NAIA Coach of the Year in 1995. Retired with a pretty sweet record, 805 wins to 402 losses. That's pretty damn good. Not too many people have 800 wins. I got Tom, and the last one, Tom Penders, Tufts. I don't know where that is. From 71 to 74, Columbia 74 to 78, Fordham 78 to 86, Rhode Island 86-88, and where he really made his name, Texas from 88 to 98, and later on George Washington 98 to 01, Houston 2004 to 10 overall record, 649 and 437, and Atlantic 10 Coach of the Year in 1987. Not a bad little resume.
I will not have you disparage the name of the Tufts Jumbos, first of all.
Wow.
You have no idea. Tufts University is the closest college to my house, where I grew up. So it's about 4 miles from my house, and it's in Medford, Massachusetts. It's kind of like a little Ivy. It's not quite an Ivy League school, but it's right up there in terms of small liberal arts schools. It's right there on Powder House Circle in Somerville/Medford, Massachusetts. So I've spent a lot of time at Tufts. So Tom Penders made his name there first, my friend. Not that school in Austin, Texas, or wherever that thing is.
All right.
Secondly.
Okay, well, all fans of the Jumbos, send your hate mail to Kirk.Buchner at NotInHallOfFame.com. Sorry.
As a matter of fact, the traffic light at College Ave is there now at the crosswalk because my ex-girlfriend was crossing the street and some guy just ran the stop sign and hit her. And she rolled up on the windshield, cut her eyebrow, and was otherwise okay. And they ended up putting in the traffic light. So there's your information you need to know about that.
Okay.
So
I stand corrected.
Tom Penders is certainly a name who is interested for this. The list of college coaches in here already, like just going back, I was like, oh, that seems like fairly far down. But this Hall of Fame started in 2006, and they put in like Fog Allen and Jim Boeheim and Larry Brown, Jim Calhoun, Lou Carnesecca, Denny Crum, John Chaney, Chuck Daly, like anyone you can basically think of. Coach K, Bobby Knight, like all the way down that first year. So there's so many. That first class had a ton of players, contributors, and coaches because they were starting in 2006. They've done a pretty good job since then. Since then, it's been like Guy Lewis, Norm Stewart, and Dr. Giselle, Jim Phelan, Nolan Richardson. So you're getting to the point now where Rick Byrd and Tom Penders make some sense. So, because the last time they put coaches in 2019, Homer Drew, Lute Olson, Rick Majerus.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it's a tough group to get in, and it's good for both of them to be there. Rick Byrd, particularly having spent so much time at a smaller school like that, making the NCAA tournament 8 times with Belmont.
That's very impressive.
Not an easy thing to do because you got one ticket. You don't win your tournament. You're not getting in.
Right. No, it's certainly not
like
easy.
you can have a bad season at Belmont, and if you finish second, you lose one tournament game, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, absolutely. And even though sort of like before, I mean, just going back to that tournament, like we were just talking about how this is going to be diluted in the next 20, 30 years. One thing that will sort of remain eternal is that tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how I don't think they can imagine having another year without one. And I don't know if we're going to be out of the depths of COVID at that point. So it's going to be interesting to see with a little bit more time what they actually end up doing with the NCAA tournament.
Right. Well, I'm just happy sports is back. How do I segue out of this? How do I segue out of this?
Not to sound like a character from Avenue Q, but only for now. But only for now. I mean, the NFL is having some serious problems with COVID right now. Mm-hmm. The fact that the Denver Broncos played last week without a quarterback on their roster, and they still played is what's the word I'm looking for?
Ludicrous? For me as a Saints fan, lucky.
Yeah, well, that too. Although that quarterback who went 1 for 11 with 2 interceptions and 13 yards passing, still would be the second best quarterback on the Bears. And I'm not sure he's not challenging for number 1. So yeah, I don't know exactly how long we're going to be able to get this to work. They may need some sort of playoff bubble for the playoffs for the NFL. I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, future Pro Football Hall of Famer Roger Goodell says they're not looking at that.
There's so many things in that sentence that made me sad. I don't know how to think. That was one of the most depressing sentences I've ever heard in my life. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm hoping that they figure this out, but I mean, the NBA is starting, the 23rd of December now?
Yes.
They're going without a bubble. It's just all going to be interesting to see what happens. By the way, random tangent.
Please.
But what did you think of the John Wall for Westbrook trade? 5 years ago, that would have been like an absolute insane blockbuster. And now all of a sudden, like, yeah, it was a trade for two guys who are more known for their contracts now probably than their play.
Well, John Wall, I've been saying for years, is overrated.
He hasn't played 50 games in the season since 2017.
Mm-hmm. So I thought he was overrated. Now he's injury prone. So now you've got Russell Westbrook, who just doesn't know how to win, and just a great player. Just this is not going to help him in Washington. I mean, he's going to go to the playoffs. I don't know how deep they're going to go. I can't wait to watch it play. I'm so excited about the NBA season coming back. I really am. Basketball is my second favorite sport to watch behind football. Sometimes it's number one, except when the NHL's back, which may not happen. We don't even know what's going on there. Playoff hockey, I love.
Sorry. Speaking of current Hall of Famer Gary Bettman and the ownership structure of the NHL seems almost perfectly happy just to not have a season.
I think you're right. I think they're perfectly happy with that. They totally are. NHL constantly shoots themselves in the foot. Every time they get momentum going, they had, and I think you and I have talked about this, when it came to the whole, with everything in the bubble, I think the NHL handled it better than everyone. Would you agree on that?
Yeah. No, yeah, they did a great job.
Yeah. So they've got, there's some momentum going. So what do? Well, we're going to fuck it all up. That's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just insane. So, no, but going back to the NBA, I do have to say, I think this probably puts Washington as no worse than the 6th seed in the East, which before they were probably like the 10th seed coming in. But, I mean, the East has gotten better. But I still mean that's still probably a matchup with either Boston or Philly in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming, or Toronto. I'm presuming Milwaukee and Miami are going to be 1-2, Boston, Philly, and Toronto 3-5. I'm not sure how much that's really going to help them as a 6th one. I'm not even talking about Brooklyn. I haven't gotten to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Who, if everybody's healthy, and Kyrie is already not talking to any of the reporters. I don't know if you saw that today.
No, it was. I was researching.
He put out a press release.
Okay,
he put out a press release rather than talk to the reporters today.
Okay. Well, Kyrie's an interesting character.
He is indeed.
Yeah, but I guess we're looking at
another interesting character.
Yeah. Who
retired this week is Andrew Bogut from the NBA.
Oh
hey!
Yeah. Yes. Well,
transition.
I like the guy. I always liked him. Never an all-star, but a former third-team player, which is kind of interesting how you make the third team, which is pretty impressive, but you weren't an all-star that year.
Yeah.
Does Andrew Bogut back into the Hall of Fame through international accomplishments?
I mean, Dino Raja, as I was bring up, is in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So my answer is probably yes.
He could. I mean, like he did win the U18, which is that's a pretty impressive tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Went to the semifinals of the Olympics on the last go. Wanted to stick around just a little longer, but so his swan song would have been the 2020 Olympics, and that's kind of cool. That he knows he's near the end. You know what? I'm just gonna keep all my options and just represent the country I love one more time.
Yeah. Here's a question for you.
Sure.
Was he a good number 1 overall pick?
I got to look at the draft that he had. Considering that as a Raptors fan, we had Andrea Bargnani as a number 1 pick, I have to say yes.
The very next year. So, yeah. So since 2000, our number 1 picks have been Kenyon Martin, Kwame Brown, Hall of Famer Yao Ming, future Hall of Famer LeBron James, and I do not mean that in the same way we were talking about future Hall of Famer Roger Brown. Probable future Hall of Famer Dwight Howard, I would say.
I'd agree.
Bogut, Bargnani, and Oden. Future not Hall of Famer, the first MVP not to make the Hall of Fame, Derrick Rose.
Yep.
Blake Griffin, God, this was the injury section. Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, John Wall, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and probably the single worst number 1 overall pick at the time too, Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, DeAndre Ayton, Zion Williamson, and Anthony Edwards. Goose. So I'd say he's kind of right in the middle there.
When you put that in perspective, I mean? Yes. Okay, do you have the Bogut's draft? Let's get Bogut's draft here.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about it. Like, who out of that list I gave you, ahead of him are Yao, LeBron, Howard, Rose, Griffin, Wall. Although I don't know about Wall. I'll say Wall, yes. But Kyrie, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons, Zion Williamson. Right? So that's like 11, which puts him basically right in the middle, which is weird. I didn't think of it that way because when you think about it. Because like you said, he at least made an all-NBA team. So as a matter of fact, he's the only person from that entire draft to make an all-NBA team. No, that can't be right.
No,
I take that back.
No, yeah, because
So the number 1 pick of that draft should have been Chris Paul.
Right, yeah, because I've got that in front of me now. So, my God, here's a name I haven't.
I misread the color coding on what I was looking at. So.
Oh, all good. Here's a name that I just loved for such a brief period of time. Andrew Bynum, drafted number 10 by the Lakers. Yeah. Man, he was so good for such a brief period of time. Another former player, All-NBA.
At one point they weren't going to... Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I was just going to say another former All-NBA player.
Yeah, at one point, who was it they wouldn't trade Bynum for?
Ooh, I don't remember.
Bynum was untouchable. I can't remember who that was a trade for. But I don't know, if you look at that draft again, Chris Paul, Deron Williams, Danny Granger clearly should have gone above him based on their career. So he's probably the 4th pick. I don't know. It's him, Bynum, David Lee.
Felton didn't have a bad career.
Charlie Villanueva was an okay player for a while.
Yeah,
Channing Frye still kicking around. Nate Robinson was, I call him a knockout, but that seems too on the nose.
Did you see that fight?
I saw enough of that fight. I'm not a boxing person. I'm not a boxing or MMA person in general. But I did see I saw enough of the highlights of that fight to know that the NBA picked the wrong person to represent them in that boxing ring.
I forget who said this. It was another NBA player, a current NBA player, who said, like, well, he's going to have to give back his slam dunk award now.
Yeah.
It's I've never seen anyone's head hit the canvas that hard. I was worried he was dead. Like, I'm not kidding. That
wasn't good.
I was that scared because just the way he sort of went down like that. I'm just going to borrow something from French. You know how they got like those different accents, like over letters. Like, and there's one that sort of like looks like a hat. When Robinson went down, he looked like a hat falling down head first. It's like, I thought again. I was so happy that he actually got up. I had Ivan Drago, Apollo Creed vibes going on with that, especially with looking at Jake Paul. He's the guy's. I don't even know who the hell he is.
I only sort of know who he is.
I know he's a YouTube guy. That's all I know. But whatever.
Anyway, yeah. Looking at this draft though, again, definitely the pick of the second round. There are two of them. Monte Ellis was pick 40, and Amir Johnson pick 56.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty good players in the second round. Also, Marcin Gortat. So, and Von Wafer. And Ronnie Turiaf. I always liked Ronnie Turiaf.
Did Brandon Bass, wasn't he one of yours?
Brandon Bass?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon Bass. A lot of these guys are on our team. Brandon Bass was a Celtic. Marvin Williams was for a brief moment. Gerald Green won the slam dunk competition. That was the first time I ever told my buddy to bet on a slam dunk competition because there's no chance Gerald Green's going to lose. He's like, "You're kidding me." I'm like, "No, just do it." And he put $150 down, and Gerald Green ended up winning like over 1,000.
What was your cut?
Nate Robinson, of course, was a Celtic. He was a donkey with Big Baby. It was Donkey and Shrek. Brandon Bass. Who else? Ryan Gomes. I always liked Ryan Gomes when he was on our team. Oh, and number 0, Orion Green, was also there. So, yeah, whatever. It's enough on the 2005 draft. But congratulations to Bogut on having a decent career and ultimately not being a terrible number 1 pick. He should have been like number 4 in that draft, maybe number 5. Mm-hmm. And you got him number 1. That's not so bad.
Yeah, actually, you really put it in perspective when you just sort of like read the last 20. And you're right, He's right in the middle.
Yeah, he's like right in the middle. Because Greg Oden, I think, is tough because he got injured. But a lot of those others, Anthony Bennett was.
I said that back then, what the hell are they picking him for? So you're going to have a guy already looks like Morgan Freeman over Durant? And you're surprised that he's aging fast? He's reverse Benjamin Button. What did they think was going to happen?
He was only 21.
Oh my! Okay.
For those times 3.
For those listening, please, right now, here's what I want you to do: Google Greg Oden, Ohio State, just so that you could see what he looked like when he played at Ohio State, and then tell yourself he just was barely old enough to drink. How the hell do you age like that? How?
I don't know.
But then again, apparently he's also blessed with like a third leg. So there you go. No, do you know that?
Not touching that one.
Well, no, I don't think either of us want to. Well, I'll say this: when his dick pic. Wow. That's all right. When his dick pic leaked, he got an offer from Vivid Entertainment. That's actually true.
Well, that's hey, you got to make money as you can. So, so I'm not sure how we're going to transition to the next thing, but
I know
we had a couple of people pass away this week. One of whom you'd like to say quite a bit about.
Yeah. Do you want to start off with Rafer Johnson, who is someone who?
Yeah, we should probably start with Rafer Johnson.
Yeah. 1960, I believe, was when he won his gold medal for the decathlon. I wasn't.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's got to be the hardest. It's got to be the hardest single event in the Olympics, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. When I was growing up, the way it was sort of that I was sort of like taught, just as I was learning about sports, that you win the decathlon, you're considered the greatest athlete that there is. And to put that in my historical perspective, that would have been when Caitlyn Jenner, then Bruce Jenner, won the Olympics. And that was one of the first athletes I was ever aware of as a little kid. Mainly because, can I say he? Because at the time it was he. He was always on the Love Boat or shows like that. He was just like everywhere. And it's like, hey, it's Bruce Jenner, the greatest athlete in the world. Okay. So that's how I always sort of saw that. Rafer Johnson, I wasn't familiar with until he became the man who lit the torch in the 1984 Olympics. And I remember watching that because I would have been 12 at the time. So I remember a lot from watching those Olympics. And, thinking, and I still think this now, the greatest honor I think you can get as an athlete, an Olympic athlete especially, is if your country is hosting the Olympics and they pick you to light the torch. I don't know a bigger honor than that.
Yeah, I mean, and where Rafer Johnson came from, too. So he was born, he passed away in 86. He was born in the 30s. He grew up originally in Texas, in all the very segregated part of Texas. He moved to California, or his family moved to California. At one point, they were living in a boxcar with, like, dividers of curtains dividing the rooms out, sort of. And he still was an incredible athlete and ended up getting all sorts of scholarships, even out living in those conditions. Got a full ride for football to UCLA and turned it down so he could focus on decathlon. And in 1960, that event there, he and another guy named C.K. Yang of Taiwan were the top two competitors. And they'd gone back and forth through the whole thing. The last event was Johnson's worst, which is the 1,500 meters, which is absolutely nuts. You have to do the whole thing, and at the end, you're running this 1,500 meters. And it took off at 9:15 p.m. So they'd done the other 9 events during the day, and then I'd run 1,500 meters at 9:15 p.m. And Johnson before you go on, though,
okay, question here for you. So, like, they did it all in one day? They didn't do it over 2 days?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. I always thought it was over 2 days, but I guess back then it wasn't.
I don't believe it was over 2 days. I think it was one. Because otherwise, why are you running at 9:15 p.m. if that's not the case?
You know who I wish was part of this right now? Someone who you and I have getting to know, who's been a guest on my regular show, Chris Huffins, who won the bronze in the 2000. And his story was he was actually leading everything up until the 1500, but that was his weakest event by quite a bit. So for him to actually hang on and still medal was like a major triumph. And just sort of like the whole story of what the decathlon is. And just even when I asked him, I said, like it doesn't take anyone who – I don't have to study like kinesiology. I'm saying that, butchering that word up. But kinesiology? Do I have that right?
That's right, yeah. You're saying that right.
All right. It's my Canadian accent, eh? But you don't have to – I don't need to sort of like study that to know that the people who excel at the 100 are built nothing like the people who excel at the 1500. It's nothing close.
Correct. Yeah, those are two completely different sets. I'm not even going to say I'm a good or never was a particularly good long distance runner, but I can run for a long time. I cannot sprint. Like it's just a completely different set of stuff for me. And you're looking at just look at the bodies of someone like Usain Bolt or Michael Johnson versus any of the people who are doing really well for like any of the Ethiopian or Kenyan guys running marathons.
Yeah, it's like not even close.
It's just not the same.
Yeah, and it's not one's better than the other. It's a different set of muscle skills.
Yeah. So two other things I want to say about Rafer Johnson other than that. First, his brother Jimmy Johnson.
Yes.
Was defensive back for the San Francisco 49ers and is in the Hall of Fame. So he was the first Jimmy Johnson in the Hall of Fame. But secondly, his big footnote in American non-sports footnote in American history. Do you know what that is?
No.
In 1968, he was working on the campaign for Robert Kennedy. When Kennedy was shot in Los Angeles, he was one of the two people who tackled Sirhan Sirhan.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Who's still alive, I think.
He was 33 at that point.
Oh, my God.
In 1968, he was 33 years old, or 32 or 33. I'm not sure. I didn't check what his birthday was. He was either 32 or 33 when RFK was shot. He was walking with RFK at the time and was actually one of the two people who tackled RFK's assassin.
No, just a hero on every front. R.A.P. Rafer Johnson, it's legend.
Yeah, and like I said, it did not register like it should have on the national news. I mean, when ESPN did their Sports Century thing in 2000, Rafer Johnson was number 53 on their list.
like the 53rd greatest athlete of the 20th century. He's right ahead of Greg Louganis, Mario Lemieux, Pete Rose, Willie Shoemaker, Elgin Baylor, right behind Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano. Like, we're talking one of the greatest athletes ever, one of the most interesting and important people probably to transcend sports. He also acted, too. He starred in several Hollywood pictures as well. I mean, just an all-around American legend.
You know, Evan,
and it barely caused a ripple when he passed.
I'm starting to think that someone should create a Hall of Fame for American athletes and just really discuss this more. Someone should do that.
Yeah. Don't give anyone any ideas.
Okay. All right.
So, So anyway, yes. Just an incredible guy, and again, did not get the due he should have when he passed this week. Mm-hmm. But there are very few people ever like Rafer Johnson in American sports history. No. So.
I certainly.
And just before, by the way, before you get to the other one, I do want to point out we did have another few guys who passed away.
Oh, yeah, please.
Like three I want to talk about quick.
Go ahead.
Before we get to Pat Patterson. Another athlete who won the bronze medal long jump in the 1972 Olympics and the gold medal in 76 for the U.S., Arnie Robertson, passed away at the age of 72. Mm-hmm. I don't have a reason as to why he passed away. He passed away the same day as Rafer Johnson. But like I said, won the bronze and the gold in long jump, which is one of the signature events in track and field. We had Kevin Burnham, who was a two-time Olympic medalist in sailing in the United States. He was only 63 when he passed away of a heart attack. But he competed in the Olympic trials in 92, 96, and 04, won the gold in Athens and the silver in Barcelona, 12 years apart. So silver in 92 in Barcelona, gold in 2004 in Athens in sailing. He passed away at 63. And a couple of actors I just quickly wanted to bring up. One, of course, playing the elder version of one of our perpetual nominees for the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, David Prowse.
Yes,
who was passed away. I'm hoping I'm not ruining anything that Anakin Skywalker does grow up to be Darth Vader. If I've ruined that for you, I apologize. Spoiler alert. But David Prowse passed away at age 85 this week. He's a member of the Lord of the British Empire. Just a guy who has a whole bunch of, everything. He was everything, not only from Star Wars, but he was in the original Casino Royale. He was in Clockwork Orange. He's in a whole bunch of different things. And, just a part of both of our childhoods passed away. You have anything to say about David Prowse?
Yeah. Check on YouTube. You can sort of see clips of his actual voice playing Darth Vader. It's not good.
Okay.
It's probably not how I should, not the right time to mention it when we just did a eulogy about him. But I do find it interesting that he actually was told, or so he claims, that it was going to be his voice used, and then when you hear it, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah. They made the right voice casting choice for
absolutely
for Darth Vader.
Yeah, but he definitely deserves some work or some credit, because he did fine work in the costume. People don't get enough credit for that. So yeah, it was. I spent a bit of time looking at some of the documentaries about him, where he's feeling he felt sort of turned away from the Star Wars universe. But, it is a blow to my childhood for sure.
And just one other quick one, a man from who most likely, we talk about Cannonball Run on this show fairly often, but
someone from Cannonball Run died?
Warren Berlinger. I'm sorry.
Someone from that movie died?
Yeah, Warren Berlinger, who played Shaky Finch.
Oh.
From Cannonball Run, passed away at the age of 83 earlier this week. So, yeah, he passed away from I don't actually see what he passed away of, but he was shaky in Cannonball Run.
Holy.
By the way, the Cannonball Run record was broken 3 times this year.
Yeah, I think you said that on a previous show.
Yeah, it fell 3 times this year because there was nobody on the roads. They figured it was a good time to try racing across the country. So anyway, so that was everybody worthwhile, and the beige mistress was quiet this week. So after being very, very active last week, she took the week off.
On a somewhat related thing, I was just doing the math quickly in my head. So he would have been younger than me when he shot Cannonball Run, and I look way better.
Well, we all do. Like, I mean, we just aren't constantly surrounded by cigarette smoke. I seriously think that's what it is. Like, if you ever, I've had one tweet ever that I've done that made a listicle that somebody posted, and it was like how people age now versus then, and it was, I have a picture from The Dirty Dozen, which is one of my favorite films. So I have a picture from The Dirty Dozen of Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson in the German house that they have to destroy, who are at the time 43 and 41. And they just look like they're in their 60s.
Wait, Lee Marvin was only 43 then?
I believe so. Yeah, hold on. Lee Marvin. Let me double check. I'm sorry, he was 40. He was 44 when it was filming.
Oh, okay. Is that all?
Yeah, he was 44 at the time, and Charles Bronson, because that came out in the early '67.
Wait. But then how do you explain?
Sorry. They were 44 and 45. Sorry, take that back.
How do you explain Greg Oden?
Greg Oden was born. You had reverse Benjamin Button. We've already been through this.
Okay, sorry.
So,
well,
anyway, so let's talk about
Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson, you're familiar with him. I know you're not a wrestling guy like me, but
only somewhat is the answer to that.
Okay. So he's a WWE Hall of Famer, inducted in 1996 when they had their first group of classes. Patterson, there are a lot of footnotes to him. From Quebec, just fell in love with wrestling, became a pro wrestler as a teenager, and then in his early 20s learned English. He didn't speak English, but became a regional star. And back then, because he debuted in 1958, so you'd go from like one area to another area to another area. There wasn't really a lot of national television, so it wasn't until the late 60s, early 70s that he really became sort of an on-top guy in San Francisco. But what everyone sort of knows him for is when he got into the WWE, which was then the WWF in the late 70s, became the first ever Intercontinental Champion. So, that belt. Your friend Kofi Kingston's held that many times.
Yep.
All right, so when Pat won it, he won it in a turn, and this is the perfect thing about wrestling. He won it in a tournament where he was already the WWF North American champion, and then merged it with the South American Championship in a fictitious tournament in Rio de Janeiro. Never happened. Because that's wrestling. And then now he's the Intercontinental Champion. It's one of the reasons I just love pro wrestling. But he was already in his 40s. He stuck around there for a bit. But then he stayed with the WWF, which became the WWF, became WWE, as Vince McMahon's right-hand man. And for me, what his real strength was, and I think everyone would sort of agree with that, he could lay down a match. Whether it was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Steve Austin, they all said that nobody could lay out a match better than he could. And that was what he was mostly known for. That was his biggest strength ever. And for him to last as long as he did, although he wasn't really under employment at the end, I learned that he was also suffering from dementia, which, as you and I have talked about, that's sort of near and dear to my heart with what my mom was going through.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go all weepy here on this, but when he did pass at age 79, it's believed that he probably had cancer. He died of liver failure, but there was a tumor that they were looking at, and just the way things were was he degraded pretty quickly. He was actually the last thing that people. That's where I learned that he had dementia. That he was at actually The Rock's dad's funeral, which was I think less than a year ago, and he was acting very erratically, like doing things that made no sense. And as it turned out, that's what he had, or that's what. So that he did have dementia. Because he used to team with Rocky's dad. And actually, it was him who told Vince, hire The Rock.
That seems like it was a good financial decision.
Well, absolutely. Other interesting things. So, like when The Rock played, I don't know the character because I never saw the movie. Get Shorty, or was it? Or maybe might have been the sequel. Rock was in. So he was. I don't know if he was still wrestling then, but The Rock's character was gay, and he said that, in preparation for him, it didn't bother him playing a gay character because one of the people who he admired the most was Pat Patterson, who was gay. Whether he was the first openly gay wrestler or not, I mean, like, that's claimed that he is. That's probably not the case because, like, back then, like, I guess like there still is now. There's all the open secrets, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so, but Pat was pretty much, everyone in the know knew that. And I'm just going to, like, tell a story from my late friend, Chavo Guerrero Sr. In a book that may never get told or sent out, because I ghost wrote, and I think I told you this, his autobiography.
I didn't, yeah. I don't think you've told anyone, but you have told me that, but I don't know if you mentioned on the podcast before.
Okay. Yeah, so I looked back at what Chavo sort of had me talk about, because he wrestled Pat Patterson in Los Angeles in 1975 or 76. At the time, Chavo was this young guy, 25, and he was billed as the champion there. Pat would have been 10, 15 years older than him, and one of the top guys in San Francisco. So he came to wrestle in LA in a series of matches against Chavo. And Chavo said how Pat taught him so much psychology, so much so that he was fooled in the ring himself. So they would lock up, and then Pat pulled back each time just saying, "Oh, this guy smells." And he was working the crowd, and then Chavo, he was still relatively green, even though he came from a wrestling family. So, like, he knew all the basics of what to do in the ring, but not necessarily how to play to the crowd. And then Chavo was he was such a hothead. Love the guy. So he said to me, "It's like, well, what's this asshole doing? I don't stink." But it was sort of like playing that, and it was just like all the little psychology things that he learned from Pat Patterson. Patterson also too created my favorite match of all time. You know what the Royal Rumble is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that came from him. That was his idea.
So he basically made the WWE a lot of money.
Yeah, he made them a lot of money. This was one guy who Vince was always loyal to. And for me, the fact that he was an openly gay wrestler came out very early is one of the least interesting things about him. It's actually more interesting to me that here you have a guy who's openly gay, and a lot of the wrestlers didn't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we can't have an openly gay football player.
Well, I mean, that was the big thing with what's his name, Sam. I can't think of his
Michael
name
Sam.
right now.
Yeah.
Michael Sam, thank you. I had PK Sam in my head, knew that was wrong.
You're thinking of
Michael
PK
Sam,
Subban.
that was the biggest thing, because he was openly gay when he came out into the draft.
Yeah. And that probably cost him a few rounds. Possibly. I mean, he was the defensive player of the conference, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
Yeah. But, things didn't work out for him. I would like to think that he's laid the groundwork for the next openly gay person to sort of do that. I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But this actually is a great segue into something else. I've got a rant.
Okay, so this is more on the Michael Sam side of things. But yes, go ahead.
Well, sort of. Because, Michael Sam opened up to his teammates. So his teammates all knew, in his senior year. And, nobody cared. But the media, right? The media wouldn't let shit go. And going back to Sam, when the Rams drafted him, I believe, and it just got hammered and hammered. Every media person. So what's it like having a gay teammate? And people just got tired. Because I think in football, more than any other team sport combined, distractions will kill you. Which includes basketball. Because it's...
Which, sorry, a complete random side
Go ahead.
thing, which is why I think this Pittsburgh Steelers are not, even though they're 11-0, are not going to win the championship, other than the fact there's also the Chiefs in the league, because they're just so whiny about all the schedule changes that have happened around them. They're so distracted on these stupid things they can't control that I think it's the history. It's really the history of the Steelers. They'll have these great teams who get caught up in other stuff and end up falling on their faces, and they're on a perfect track for that again. Just out of nowhere. So
for sure, it's also the worst thing too. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to the Chicago Bears in 1985 was losing to Miami.
Yeah, probably true.
Yeah. But, it got to the point where the Ram players didn't want to hear about it. They were sick of it. I don't think they had a problem with Michael Sam. I never heard or never read anything about that. But we have a similar situation that happened last week. And we were supposed to record Thursday night. It got pushed to Friday night. I'm actually and that was my fault because I suck and I fell asleep. But, yeah.
You did have to admit that on the show.
I'm an open book for the whole world to see. No? Okay, I don't know. Right now we had something very interesting with a lady named Sarah Fuller, who... Did you see the kick?
I did.
Okay. Before I go into the kick, I just want to make it very, very clear. Sarah Fuller... From what I can tell, this is. At first, I thought I didn't think much about it on Saturday, because the one great thing I love about college football for me and college basketball, and for that matter, EPL, I got no team. I just sit back, watch, enjoy my day, and I just want to be entertained. So since Vanderbilt sucks, I wasn't watching Vanderbilt. I didn't even know that they had a girl kicker. Didn't pay attention. Why would I? Vanderbilt versus Missouri, both losing teams. Pass. Not interested. So after she kicked or played in that one play, so then you see a bit of news highlights, a bit of this, a bit of that, and how she made history as the first player from the Power Five. And I didn't care because we've seen women in college football before. I mean, I have. I'm sure you have.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't seem to me like this was it was really that big a deal. And again, Vanderbilt sucks. They were 0-7 before. They're 0-8. So, yeah, you played for a team in the Power Conference, but you played for the Power 5? Again, I didn't think much about it until it just sort of was everywhere and everywhere and everywhere. And I thought, holy shit, do people not know this has already happened multiple times? That there have been women who have played in college football in a kicking role. There are piles of women who play in high school football.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, but we're talking at least from what I read, at least in the 5 digits. 5 digits in Pop Warner. High school, that's not the case. But still, it's not a novelty to me. And yet, this was the biggest thing ever. Hillary Clinton retweeted this. What a great, great step this is. Okay. So first I thought, is this just some kind of stunt It doesn't seem to be. Vanderbilt has had no kicker. I don't know why the punter didn't do it, but whatever. And so my first thought was,
Vanderbilt didn't have a kicker through a combination of COVID and injuries.
Well, right, but I mean, why did they still had a punter?
True.
Who could have possibly stepped in? So I don't know why he didn't. Doesn't matter. And they don't have a men's soccer team, which surprised me. I would have thought that a bigger school like that would have a men's soccer team, and they don't. So kudos to her for they asked her to do it, and she didn't go to them. They came to her.
Mm-hmm.
She went there, and she had this great attitude. Okay, I'm going to do this. So we all saw the kick. Well, I'm assuming that people listening may have, if you haven't, YouTube that. It was Vanderbilt, again, just how badly they are. So if she's going to be the only kicker on the team for that game against Missouri, the only opportunity she had to kick was the second half kickoff. They didn't come close to, there was no extra point, there was no touchdown, there was no field goal, there was no nothing. It was that kick, which was a squib kick, that was recovered on the 35. So she only kicked it about 30 yards. Did okay. I mean, like, a lot of people are saying, well, this was a shit kick. I don't think it was a shit kick so much as you've got someone who's never done this before. Let's see what you can do. So we're going to practice this. And she did it. Am I safe in saying that?
Yeah, I'd say that first one was just like, let's allow her to do it. Let's not do anything. Give her a shot at a game and go from there. So I agree with you. It was a squib kick. It was an intentional squib kick.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't she shanked it and it ended up being a squib kick.
Right.
That was a design call by the coaches.
Right. So. And so for the people who are saying that she shanked it on purpose, or not purpose, that she shanked it because she didn't have the skill, that's not true. For those who say, well, it was a bad kick for a girl, yeah. But what is she going to do? Right? I mean, like, this is what they did with the card that they were dealt. Because if you look at the way they were running and the way she was kicking it, she kicked it where she wanted it to. And again, was it a great squib kick? No. It was good enough. It was good enough, and the special teams coach was rightfully happy. Now here's where everything goes to shit. The media runs with this. Again, like it never happened before. And, okay, so you're a father, and so I want your opinion on this more. Because, like, I have a dog and a turtle. And my turtle's turning 1, and he's going to have a birthday party because I'm a geek, and I don't give a shit. But it's not the same as having a kid, obviously. So is Sarah Fuller, I mean, before I go any further, because I've got a lot more to say on this, what was your reaction seeing that as someone's got a daughter?
What was my reaction to what? Seeing her kick, or my reaction to everyone else's reaction of seeing her kick?
Let's say both.
So my reaction to see her kick is I've seen, before she kicked, I saw her soccer highlights. I mean, she could kick a soccer ball like 60, 70 yards in the air.
Which is why
she clearly knows how to kick.
Oh, for sure.
Which is why they grabbed her in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
So the actual kick itself, I mean, she had one shot at it. You can't say much because her team's so bad, she never got another chance to kick it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she was called to do something. She came out and did it. Not greatly, but she's a college kid doing her first squib kick. Like,
she did good enough.
Come on.
Yeah.
She accomplished what she's out there to do.
Yeah.
Right? As for the reaction of people to this, on your one hand, you're right that this has been done. She's not the first woman. It's been done by a particular kicker all over the place. But just the weird misogyny of it that goes all over the internet with the usual suspects. I don't even bother to name them, but we all know.
I already know who you're talking about.
The football misogynists are out there with national reach.
Mm-hmm.
That this is somehow Vanderbilt trying to be too woke, and the fact they're woke is why they're 0-7 or 0-8. Or it's like just somehow this and Harry Styles are showing that we're becoming too feminized. Like
another thing I could care less about.
It's exhausting and dumb.
Right.
So that's my opinion.
No, and I agree with you. And I think going to that thing, because that was the first reactions that I was seeing. Like, okay, well, they're trying to like make a statement and go all woke, and then like, okay, then you learn more, because that's the thing. If there's a topic that I'm super interested in, I'm going to learn as many angles as I can.
Right.
And I'll call that my Covington Kid rule. And I think we all remember the Covington Kid. Because the first time, like, I don't know about you, like, maybe, and apologies if we've talked about this before, but the first time I saw that clip on YouTube where it was just him sort of like with that goofy smirk in front of the First Nations gentleman, I don't know about you, I wanted to punch the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then more information comes out, and then it turns out that the elder approached him, and he was in sort of like this clustered position. I'm like, crap, that could have been me as a 17-year-old. I wouldn't have been wearing that dumb hat, but it did teach me, whenever there's something that gets me hot, wait 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I did here. So, and I agree with what you said. There was a lot of misogynistic comments towards that, and not really looking at the kick itself and what it was. Moving on, 2 days later, the coach is fired, and the first black coach at Vanderbilt. But I think you and I can both agree, when you have a record like he had, which was, I think, a winning percentage of under 400, you're going to get fired. And you're coming off a 41-0 loss. That's it. You're done. It's time to go. And then learning about more of like what they had available, other than the potential thing with a punter. And again, I don't know. What else is he supposed to do? And that's Derek Mason, not the former wide receiver, but the coach, now former coach of Vanderbilt. My issue then becomes with media then just making this so big because they want something so bad. And maybe, and part of that is correct. I mean, you talked about woke media. They did try way too hard on something that should not have been as big as it was, in my opinion.
Agreed, but I think we've sort of had a discussion like this before, in that, like when we were talking about Charlie Pride a few weeks ago, getting the Lifetime Achievement Award from the
Country Music Hall,
Country Music Awards, right?
Right.
When you bring up Charlie Pride's race, not because it matters necessarily, because Charlie Pride stands out as being, I mean, one of 3 really ever African American country artists who have made it, and definitely with all apologies to Darius Rucker, the most successful of them. And because of that, he sticks out, and a bigger deal gets made of his race in that he's in a genre of music which is not usually particularly, I don't know if it's friendly or friendly may not be the right word, but it's not something that a lot of African American people gravitate towards. I can say that, right? And because of that reason, it becomes a big deal when he wins that award, not just because he deserved it. Like Charlie Pride winning that award is by no means pandering. Like, the dude deserves that award.
But there was
because he's
pandering
African American and gets that award, it becomes a bigger deal.
Yeah, but
in football, which is the machismo sport, at least allegedly, having a woman in a major college thing, even if it's not the first time ever, it's a bit of an oddity, and people are going to always stare at an audience. Like that stupid monolith that showed up in Utah and then disappeared in the middle of the night. The reason that those 4 guys took it down, other than maybe the ones who came up with it in the first place, is that they didn't want people coming to that oddity because the land around it wasn't set up in a situation in which there were places for people to park, or it was basically going to screw up the entire ecosystem, having people coming to stare at a monolith in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what the media was doing with this.
Yes, but, and I'm glad you brought up the word pandering, because that did happen. The the SEC, Southeastern Football Conference, named Sarah Fuller the Special Teams Player of the Week.
Okay, well, that's pandering.
That was disgusting.
The question is, what happens if they didn't?
Nothing. Nothing would have happened.
You don't think the SEC gets accused of being a old boys network? I mean, it's the SEC. It's not the Big Ten.
Well, which is exactly why they probably felt they had to do it.
That's what I'm saying. That's why they had to do it. But at the same
They
time,
did not have to.
They're in a no-win situation.
There is a win situation. Don't name her the Special Teams Player of the Week when she was actually literally the worst Special Teams Kicker of the Week from that conference. And it's not even close. Mm. Don't pander. Celebrate what she did, which is great. Do not sort of like give her a participation trophy that she didn't earn. That's not equality.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. I got that. Yep. I'm just saying I feel like they probably felt they were painted into a corner.
Yeah, and don't. Well,
but I agree. I agree with you. You're right.
Yeah. And also, don't write a flowery thing on your press release saying I was a perfectly executed kick that sailed 30 yards. A, it didn't sail. B, it wasn't perfectly executed. Just call it for what it is. If she's going to win that, just say she broke them. And I write all day. And a lot of what I write isn't necessarily fun because I'm trying to sort of like be very neutral. When I'm passionate, it's far, as you can tell, almost by the inflection of my voice, it's far more fun. But I write a lot of neutral shit all day. Don't make it even worse than it is, because what happens with that? People pounce on it, and they should, because that was pandering. It doesn't do her any favors. And so so Sarah herself, I have to openly question, because you probably also saw the interviews that came out, and she didn't do herself any favors.
I can be honest, I did not see any of the interviews.
Okay. All right. So she did a couple afterwards, and this is sort of what would just it really she really screwed up, in my opinion. And you can tell me if you think I'm wrong here. So she was interviewed by Holly Rowe at ESPN, and I think you and I both talked about her in the past, someone who we really like. And actually, I love Holly. I think she's fantastic. Part of the interview, and that sort of came out that she got to do a halftime speech. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so she did a halftime. She told Holly that she did a halftime speech, which is weird, because like, why would the coach have her do it? Because it wasn't that she sat up and said, I'm going to do it. Apparently they asked her to. I don't know why that would even happen, because A, you're a kicker. B, you just got there.
Right.
You're now putting her in this weird position. No, she actually did that and said how, like, here's how we win in women's soccer. Like, we just really motivate each other, and stuff like that. And if you're the Vanderbilt football player right now, you're just pissed off, because right now your team stinks. And you're just being lectured by someone who hasn't even played yet. She did this at halftime. Her kick was in the second half.
Right.
I don't know about yourself. I don't know if you bounce from company to company. It's funny, like, we talk all the time, but I don't know about your actual work history. I don't think you know much about mine.
You work?
Not anymore. Not anymore. This is it. Well done, by the way. But I've been the new guy in the sales team. I've been sort of the veteran in the sales team. When you're the rookie, you shut your mouth. in group situations. You learn, you try and figure out what the culture is. Now, Sarah was put in a position where she didn't know any better. And another thing I'll just sort of like have people sort of look at is Pat McAfee, who's got a great podcast too.
Mm-hmm. And always tells it like it is.
Yes. And so so he was being asked about that. And so he just came out and sort of said that. He said, I wouldn't have had the balls at any point in my career to even do that. And I was a former captain. Now, he was being very, very diplomatic and very, very PC. And he's also the one who sort of broke down the whole situation, that her kick was fine. We can't call it great. We can't call it good. We can call it fine. We don't know what her skill level is. I have no clue.
Right.
In terms of football, neither does she. Because also she never played football, and which is sort of where I'm going to segue into a bunch of other stuff to you later. So we have someone here who went out there and said that we know that she did the speech because she told Holly Rowe this. And then, she called out her teammates, and because she also was in that whole chat, she said she was getting pissed off because they weren't celebrating first downs. She's like, that's their winning culture. That's what we did when we wanted all in women's soccer. All right, so now you've got someone. Forget that she's female. Let's forget that. You've got someone who just got there, telling you how to win. Am I wrong here? Is this just shut up?
Again, yeah. I've been on teams before. I've rarely ever spoken up for anything. And again, it's weird for a kicker and weird for everything else. But
so she screwed up twice.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So it was two epic screw-ups.
She was asked to speak. She was asked to speak by the coach. She did meet. She gave her perspective. Right. Whether she should have said no or not, fine.
No, and I give her that. She didn't know any better. But then she goes out there and tells pretty much everyone how she called out her teammates. And she just said that coaches came up to her afterward and said, that was so great. I wish we could have said that. So is there any wonder, Evan, at this point that Vanderbilt will not be playing this week? And they say due to COVID, but also a few people opted out. According to Rivals.com or someone there, they said that there was a bit of a mutiny. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know. But I know that if you're a Vanderbilt player right now, I wouldn't want to play with her. Forget her gender. That's irrelevant to me.
All right. So if you don't want to play with her and opt out and quit on your team, you're an asshole.
Maybe. But, I mean, if you're going through
if you quit on your team because somebody, the coach who's no longer there, asked someone to make a speech and they made a speech and you quit on your team, you think she's the problem?
I do.
That's bullshit, dude. I'm sorry. I'm 100% against you on that.
Okay,
anyone who's quitting on the team because that girl made a speech deserves to be thrown off the team and not welcome back.
Okay,
you don't quit on your teammates because somebody made a speech.
It's not just that. They don't. If you're going to go through the trenches and it doesn't matter what you do, all attention is on someone who also her postings. She never mentioned her teammates once. Not once.
All right. I've let you go on in this. I think this is you're going off the deep end a bit on this.
Maybe.
One.
That's why I wanted your perspective. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so that last part, I'm going to reiterate that. If you quit on your team because someone made a speech, the coach asked someone to do something, and they did what the coach asked them to do, and you didn't like it, and you quit on the team because that coach told someone to do something and they did it, screw you.
Maybe.
Get the fuck off my team. I'm sorry. And whether or not she handled it well,
she's in a position in which she has absolutely no history of doing things. You already gave her a pass on the kick.
Sure.
Why are you not giving her a pass on the media stuff?
I am giving her a pass on the media stuff.
She literally has never been... You are not giving her a pass.
I am too.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
You're basically blaming her for everything. Saying that she never mentioned her teammates, that she mentioned that she called them out in the thing. Like, she doesn't know what the hell she's going to do. And clearly she had a coach who wasn't in charge of stuff, who would have just told her to rein it in or talk to the team. But he was fired beforehand anyway, before they had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is just... The media reaction is fine. Everything like that, I'm not putting anything extra on this person who is called an extraordinary circumstance, has no training in it, has never dealt with media before, and didn't do a good job at it. Gary Bettman's been bad with the media for 30 years.
Fair enough.
So you've lost me at this point.
Oh, well, it won't be the first time.
Yeah. So, no, again, and if anyone quit on that team, I have no idea. You just told me. This is my gut reaction.
Well, I don't know
I don't
know that they did.
But if I ever had it, well, and I don't either. So I'm saying that if in the case that report that you just mentioned is true, those guys should never, ever, ever play a competitive sport ever again.
Well, a lot of them probably won't.
Well, they could play, I don't know, recreational football somewhere.
I suppose so. All right, so I got a second half to this, since we're in disagreement on this one.
Boy.
Well, no, I think you're going to like this.
Okay.
I do. This is my redeemer part in your eyes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What I want the media to do is focus on two other women.
Okay.
Katie Nida, who 20 years before was the first player.
Sorry, say that again.
Katie Nida, HNIDA.
Yeah. All right. Oh, okay.
So, because she kicked for Colorado and New Mexico. Now, New Mexico, the first one to do it for a bowl game. And New Mexico, obviously, if they're in a bowl game, they're a lot bigger deal than Vanderbilt right now.
Right.
So her I was aware of. What I wasn't aware of was during her time in Colorado, and this is disgusting, she was raped by a teammate, according to her.
Yeah, that I do. As soon as you said her name, I didn't hear it right the first time.
Okay.
I did remember that part of it because there's a whole huge scandal about that.
Yeah, I see. I wasn't aware of that. I had no idea. So I watched her TED Talk this week. And the fact that this happened to her at Colorado, the university that she dreamed of playing for, walked on, did so. And she did everything. She played her high school football. She was able to sort of, I don't think she ever actually played for Colorado, but she was dressed. She was dressed to play. Now, she goes through this traumatic experience in Colorado, and then goes to New Mexico, and then continues at her dream. That's my hero.
Yeah, fine.
And I think that's awesome. And again, I'm not taking anything away from what Sarah did. It is impressive.
No, I understand, because you're right. I couldn't remember her name until you brought it up.
Yeah.
But it's like I thought I remembered someone she was like, what, 2008, 2009, somewhere in that area? When she was kicking?
What's that?
When did Katie Nida kick?
Oh, it was like 2000.
Oh, is it that far? Was that long ago? Oh my God, I'm getting old.
Yeah, so I mean,
okay.
It's like 2000, 2001, 2002. I forget, we're like around that time. So she'd be like in her early 40s now. So
okay.
This, to me, for someone to have gone through that, I wouldn't have had it in me to keep going. But she did. Mm-hmm. She did. And, that's outstanding and so impressive. And for me, inspirational. So like that also, I think, shows how far we've sort of come. I don't think anything like that would have happened to Sarah, and I don't want that to her. But it's a different culture.
I disagree with that.
What? That it could happen right now? I think it's a hell of a lot less likely.
Of course it could happen right now.
Okay. Maybe I'm being naive. And I want to be naive here.
You're being naive.
Okay, well, let me be naive because I don't want to. I'm trying to be Canadian and see the good in everyone here, as opposed to being sort of like 10 minutes ago. I might have been an asshole. Maybe I'm trying to redeem.
Michigan State had a member of their training staff that was sexually assaulting people for years, and Izzo knew about it and had essentially no consequences. There's still people defending Joe Paterno at Penn State.
True.
The guy who covered up for the guy at Ohio State is still in Congress.
Okay, so it's a lot less likely.
We haven't learned anything as a society.
Well, I'd like to think it's a lot less likely.
Brooke Turner raped someone in a alley. Had the guys who rescued that girl beat the crap out of him and were crying so badly at seeing her situation. And he got 6 months probation because he didn't want to ruin his life. There's no consequences for anything. So don't tell me that it wouldn't happen now. It 100% would happen now. And only would happen now, it would probably be covered up just like everything else.
I'd like to think we've evolved past that in some cases.
Let
me put on me these rose-colored glasses for a minute.
Okay, fine. But go ahead.
All right, and I'm probably wrong. I just don't want to be. I got a second woman for everyone to sort of like love who should have got way more press. Kim Ng. The new general manager for the Marlins.
Right, yes.
Past assistant general manager for the Yankees, for the Dodgers, worked for the American League. Nothing was handed to her. And I'm not saying something was handed to Sarah. She fell into it. But these are two women right now who are someone who I think you can really look up to. Again, I don't know what Sarah's going to become. I have no idea. But these are two people who I think should have gotten a way more press, way more attention. And if I can just sort of like use
Kim Ng had a lot of attention, though, when she got named. Because Kim Ng should have been a general manager
not by the mainstream press.
A decade ago.
Not by the mainstream press. With the sporting press, yes. But by the mainstream media, no. Nothing.
I disagree. I saw a lot of stuff on Kim Ng in the mainstream press.
Maybe to me it wasn't enough.
Okay. But that's fair enough. That's a big deal because not only is she a woman, she's also the first Asian general manager.
Yes.
So there was a whole bunch of stuff on that. I remember actually when she got hired reading a USA Today article, which is essentially the litmus test as to whether the mainstream press covered something or not. If it makes USA Today, then it's been covered by most people.
And I'm in Barbados. I don't see as much. Maybe I just wanted to see more. And that could be my own personal bias, which we all have.
Right. No, but agreed. No, she's been a leading candidate for a general managership for at least not a whole decade, at least half a decade. So, I mean, she's 51. She probably should have, if she were a guy, she probably would have had this job at least in her mid-40s.
I'd agree.
Or she would have had a job.
I'd agree with that. So now I'm not a sexist anymore, I hope. I don't know.
No, you weren't sexist. You weren't sexist at all.
Okay.
It was just no, you weren't sexist at all. It was just the standard you're trying to keep for a complete amateur attempting something for the first time as a pseudo and is expecting to handle as a pseudo professional. Like, should she have made a different decision? Should she have told the coach no? We asked her to address the team. Probably. But it's her first time, and he may have just been like, hey, I want your perspective as someone who's won in it for, something else. We've never won. Can you speak? Should she have handled it better with a Holly Rowe and national press? Probably. But she's never been there before. No, I can tell you, I came up an escalator in Washington, D.C., and a reporter for NBC station in Washington, D.C., my wife and I were together, asked a question, and my wife is notoriously shy compared to me. Most people are notoriously shy compared to me, but my wife is super shy compared to me. And she asked a question, and I talked for a minute and a half, 2 minutes probably, and my wife just said, what he means is this. It said like 10 words. And the 10 words my wife said ended up on the news, and everything I said was completely cut out. My friend Adam, who is calling back to Tufts, he is an economics professor at Tufts. He's married to an anthropology professor. I actually officiated their wedding. The only Jewish wedding I've ever been to, and I was the officiant. But my friend Adam was the A+ student of the week for New Center 5 in Boston when we were kids, and Adam needed 2 friends to come in and do an interview. And I was up there, and my buddy Ryan was there too because I dragged him along. And the reporter, the late Kirby Perkins, was asking all these questions, and Ryan wasn't saying anything, and I was answering all the questions. And then at the end, they said, "Ryan, don't you have anything to say?" He's like, "Well, Adam's always been the smartest kid in class." And that was the only thing out of the entire interview they used for the thing. So as someone who has been in front of the press a couple of times and completely fallen on my face, I completely understand not handling it well. And rambling and not saying what you're supposed to say and everything like that. She's not a polished person, and I just think it's crazy to expect her to be so.
I'm not, but I wonder what they know that we don't. And maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe it's just a lot of this young male ego. It could be that. No idea. All I know is I know nothing from what they're saying because no one's talking to them. And all their Twitters are silent. Don't know. Don't have a clue.
Okay.
Can I close off with my Jewish wedding story?
It's probably better for them to remain silent and say something
totally.
they're going to regret
no,
later.
I'd agree with that. I'm going to close with a Jewish wedding story.
Oh, please do.
All right.
I mean, we have not, of all the topics we've gotten to before, Jewish wedding stories is not something we've come up with. So this is a great way to end.
All right. So I went to one. My ex-wife dragged me to one. I was so pissed off because it was on a Sunday during the football season. I didn't want to go. I didn't even know this person. So you know that part where they're sort of like doing they put the bride and the groom on the chair?
Yep.
And raise that up? Yeah, apparently when the bride's really fat, they fall off.
Oh, jeez.
And they did. And I laughed. And I got hit. Because she's like, shouldn't be laughing at that. Because I was the only one to laugh. It was kind of funny. And the Saints were playing, and I kept sneaking away to check the score. They were playing the Jets. And that was the game where Kyle Turley ripped the guy's helmet off.
Oh, yes. The very level-headed Kyle Turley.
Who I actually interviewed for this site, by the way. A long time ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. And also, so there you go. So don't laugh around your ex-wife at a fat Jewish woman falling from chairs that people couldn't hold when they were trying to lift it up and down. Apparently it's not good.
Do, 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 ding. All right, with that, I think we should probably end it because I don't even know where to go from here.
Nice. So. All right, cool. Stay safe, Evan. Thank you all for listening. Look for a lot more content regularly from us at NotInHallOfFame.com. And with that, stay safe, everyone. 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 Stay safe, everyone.